So, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Shimon and Katerina. We will be discussing together today ensuring Jewish life in Europe. When I thought about the subject, the title that they gave us, and when I thought about who should be the participants around the table, I thought that it concerned people from all over Europe, from the Mediterranean to Central Europe, from north to south. It has to do with the life of all the Jewish communities. We mentioned Europe, we should mention the United Kingdom, we should mention countries in former Soviet Union, and of course Russia, and the European Union itself. So in this case, Israel definitely sees it as a very, very crucial and important matter, but also in many cases, we see ourselves only as second actors or as second supporters, and we hold the states or the cities or the authorities as the first responsible and committed for ensuring Jewish life. So today we're going to speak about it from different aspects. I know it's under the umbrella of the Global Forum on Fighting Anti-Semitism, but we're not going to discuss only anti-Semitism. We're going to discuss also other challenges that doesn't necessarily has to do with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism will be also on the table. The format of the conversation will be each speaker, I will present all the speakers, and then each speaker will have 5 to 7 minutes, more or less. Unfortunately, we should have Dr. Chaim Ben Yaakov with us, but he's sick this morning. He got up a little bit sick, so if he will be able to join us, he lost his voice. I'm not sure how much he will be able to present. 2 words about myself, and then presenting the distinguished people around the table, virtual and physical. My name is Hamutal Rogel Fuchs. I'm the head of the Department for Jewish Community at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Under the Diaspora Division, I'm a career diplomat for the last almost 18 years. I was posted to Senegal, to the Netherlands, and to Spain. So something about Europe I know, not enough, not as much as you do. And for the last almost 2 years, I'm holding this position. Here with us also in the room, Gali Volkovich from my department, who is helping us with summarizing, because at the end of the day, we would like to come out with some conclusion that would not be only conclusion, yes, we should protect Jewish life in Europe, but also something like working plan. So let me present the people for the people who are online and for the people who will watch us later on. Here with us is Katharina von Schneuban, who was appointed as the first European Commission coordinator on combating anti-Semitism and frustrating Jewish life ever since December 2015. So her mandate includes working closely with the Jewish communities on behalf of the European Commission, proposing and implementing EC policy to prevent and fight anti-Semitism. She's been working with the Commission long before, unbelievable when you think how young she is, ever since 2002. And being the advisor also to the European Commission President. With us also, Leon Shaltiel from Greece. Leon is the representative at UN Geneva and UNESCO and coordinator of countering anti-Semitism for the World Jewish Congress. We had your president before. He's been working on human rights issues around the world. The majority of it with the United Nations in Geneva. Is a member of the Central Board of Jewish Communities of Greece and of Greek delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, to IHRA. With us also around the table, the virtual table, is Shimon Cohen. Welcome. Shimon is Shimon, are you with us? I don't see you. Did we lose you, Shimon? Let me see. Okay, we're gaining by the beginning of. Okay, so we have also with us Shimon Cohen, who is the founder and chairman of London-based public relations agency. Shimon has been doing many things, among them establish and head Shchita UK and the campaign to raise awareness of Shchita across the media, and hopefully we will see him with us soon. And last but not least, here with us in the room is also Rabbi Pinchas Goldschmidt. So happy that you could join us. I'd love to see faces on the screen, but it's better to see people in the room with us, and I hope to see you all soon. So Rabbi Pinchas Goldschmidt has been the chief rabbi of Moscow ever since 1993, serving in Moscow Choral Synagogue, if I'm saying it right, with I have roots in Odessa, but not enough Russian accents. And ever since 2011, he serves as the president of the Conference of European Rabbis, CER, which unite over 700 communal rabbis from Dublin to, you help me.
Vladivostok.
Exactly. And so we will be discussing all those items that are on our table on a daily basis. And I would like to start with Rabbi Pinchas Goldschmidt. So Rabbi, please.
Thank you very much, Chamutal, for inviting me to this wonderful panel, this conference, which is organized not the first time by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is a very important gathering, and it puts the struggle against anti-Semitism worldwide on the front line, also for Israeli diplomacy. And I would like to thank also the Israeli Foreign Ministry for taking such an active part in combating anti-Semitism all over the world. So, with your permission, I also like to recognize here we are among friends we work with throughout the year. Mrs. Katharina von Schnurbein. We only last Wednesday evening we have met in Brussels, and my neighbor, Dr. Leon Saltiel, as well as Lawrence Weinbaum from the World Jewish Congress. It's great to see you all, and Shimon Cohen from London. So, ensuring continuity of Jewish life in Europe is very much tied to anti-Semitism, because if you're only going to fight anti-Semitism and you're not going to have a future for Jewish life, it's like having a successful operation on the patient, but the patient has died. So the operation was successful. So how do we ensure the continuity of Jewish life in Europe? And here I would like also to recognize the wonderful work done by the European Commission, headed by Katharina von Schnurbein, in including the Jewish future in Europe as part of the struggle of anti-Semitism. It is an integral part of the struggle against anti-Semitism, and I explain exactly how. Anti-Semitism, we have non-political correct anti-Semitism with vicious, also violent anti-Semitism, with terrorism, attacks against synagogues, individuals, children walking with kippah in the streets of Brussels and Paris. But there is also the other part, which is less known as being anti-Semitism. It is more under the umbrella of the lack of religious freedom. It is the legislating, the wave of legislation against Jewish practice throughout Europe. Throughout Europe, there's a wave going on right now, and this wave is getting stronger and higher, going from Iceland to Denmark, to Belgium, to Poland, to Finland, other Scandinavian countries. And while it is under a total different title, it is under the title of rights of animals, of rights of children, and forbidding Brit Milah and Shrita, circumcision and kosher slaughter. And actually, mostly, it is against the new Europeans, the immigrants from the Middle East, those of the Muslim faith. We, the Jews, are the collateral damage. And many of the European politicians, especially the far-right politicians, are not unhappy that we are the collateral damage, because to be anti-Semitic today is not politically correct. To be anti-Muslim today is politically correct, unfortunately, in the European Union. So what have we seen happening in the last few years? We have seen, if in the past, the agenda of forbidding Shrita and Milah was part of the far right, whether Wilders' party in Holland or Le Pen's party in France, the Freedom Party in Austria, as the far-right parties have gained ground and the center-right parties have feared of losing ground to the center parties, the center-right parties have, to some extent, taken over the platform of the far-right parties and have implemented additional legislation against Jewish practice. The best example is what has happened in two regions in Belgium, in Wallonia and in Flanders, where Shechita, halal, and kosher was outlawed in as of last year. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that most European politicians don't know the issue or don't understand the issue. They think, I'll take the example of Iceland. When in Iceland there was a motion to forbid Brit Milah, and the Icelandic parliamentarian who proposed this legislation says, "Oh, we're not against it. We would like to have a Jewish community, but we don't. Okay, just stop circumcising your children and continue to be Jewish." So, there is no understanding of the importance of religious ritual for our religious community, and they assume that okay, the politicians are going to tell the religious communities how to act and how to perform their ritual acts, which is in total contrary to all the basis of the values of religious freedom. And I would like to remind something which many Europeans have forgotten in the last years. Europeans says, we have to agree that you have the right to do Shrita. We have to agree that you have the right to circumcise your child. No, you don't have to agree. You can say, we the Jews, we are behind the times. We're 3,000 years behind the times. But however, because we believe in the value of democracy and individual rights and human rights and religious freedom, you have the right to educate your children the way you want without me telling you what to do. That's the basis of religious freedom, and that's a fact which is being forgotten by many European politicians today. However, and I'll give you just one example. Last Tuesday night, we spent time in Strasbourg, and we spent time with the President of the EU Council, the Prime Minister of Slovenia, Prime Minister Johnson. And hello, Dan. Great to see you here. Yeah. We said, hello, Slovenia is the only country in the European Union where Brit Milah and Shrita are forbidden. He says, what? He says, first of all, it was not me, it was a socialist. Number two, he said, I thought it was only against the Muslims. And number three, we just moved our embassy to Jerusalem. We love Israel, the socialists of Hamas. So, and he made a statement in the Great Synagogue of Strasbourg in front of European politicians that they're going to rescind, and it's not a law, it is just a regulation of the Agricultural and Health Ministry against Brit Milah and against Shrita. So this is one example to what extent European politicians are not aware at all of the problems it creates for the Jewish community, and there is no continuity, there is no future for the Jewish community unless they are taking care of that. So do I still have a few minutes?
No, you're good. Listen, I'll explain to you what's happening with the camera. It should move. It should move every time that someone speaks. It should move to see him a little bit. Maybe we need you just to move, Dan and Ronnie, So you can watch also the speakers from abroad, even though it's focused on us when we speak, but later on we will open it for a discussion. Thank you very much, Rabbi. We will open it later on. I think you must be, not I think, I know, I've been working on those things for the expert in the room about those challenges. I would like to ask now Dr. Shaltiel to get your perspective a little bit that comes also from international organization and the way they watch Jewish life in Europe, but also from the community itself. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let's maybe get people to sit.
Yes. Dan, you may sit here just so you can see Katerina and Shimon and please take a seat.
I'll tell you what, I'll sit here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the kind invitation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs for this very timely and important conference. Delighted to be here with all of you today, and very high-level speakers, high-level panel. I'm both honored and humbled to be participating at this session this morning. You must all be very aware of the results of the December 2018 report by the FRA. Just to remind you of some statistics speaking about ensuring continuity of Jewish life in Europe. 9 in 10 feel that anti-Semitism has increased in their country. More than 8 in 10 consider it to be a serious problem. 1 in 5 know family members or other people close to them who were verbally insulted, harassed, or physically attacked. Nearly half of the respondents worried about being submitted to anti-Semitic verbal insults. 4 in 10 worried about an anti-Semitic physical attack. 1 in 3 avoid visiting Jewish events because they don't feel safe as Jews. More than 1 in 3 consider emigrating in the last 5 years, as they don't feel safe as Jews in the country where they live. So speaking about ensuring continuity of Jewish life in Europe, if 1 out of 3 Jews in Europe have considered immigrating, it's a very bad and worrying sign, and of course threatens the continuity of Jewish life in Europe. If we add into this mix from the 2018, the mainstreaming of anti-Semitism of anti-Semitism in everyday life, and the normalization that we've been discussing in this conference for the last 2 days, the increasing neo-Nazi and extremism activity, and compounded by the anti-Semitic attitudes that have emerged after the COVID pandemic and the recent conflict in Gaza, it's a very, very dark picture. Not to mention, of course, the reach and power of social media that take all of these factors and really disseminate them very fast and quickly, and really propel anti-Semitism in levels we've never seen before. So I'm here as a representative of the World Jewish Congress. We are the umbrella organization of Jewish communities around the world. And in that sense, safeguarding the existence and strengthening Jewish communities around the world is part of our mandate. We take these warnings very seriously, and since the conference is devoted to concrete items for action, I would like to focus my remaining minutes on what we do concretely to ensure continuity of Jewish life in Europe through our work. I will speak about 3 categories. First of all, community support. Second, combating anti-Semitism. And third, supporting the youth, Jewish youth in Europe. In terms of community support, I would like to speak about 5 things. First, we network the communities themselves. We have established what we call the National Community Directors Forum, which meets regularly of all the directors of Jewish communities, where they address issues, they share good practices, and they exchange information among themselves. Second, we have dedicated staff that is in daily touch with the Jewish communities for contact and support on their needs. Third, we produce daily a compilation of news items from around the world. We discuss it internally and also share it with community leaders, and also take action on these developments in accordance and in coordination with them. Fourth, regular diplomatic activity with this government and visits to the countries when they require us to be there and of assistance. And fifth, interfaith coalition building. Rabbi Goldschmidt knows very well the importance of building coalitions, because the fight against anti-Semitism is not only a Jewish fight, we need allies. This is with regard to supporting communities. With regards to the fight against anti-Semitism, Katerina Vorshoanmai knows very well because she's co-chair of our SECA initiative, which meets twice a year and brings all the envoys on the fight against anti-Semitism together, again, to organize them, to coordinate, and to create joint policies. Second, we have supported the EU Council declarations, the 2 EU Council declarations on the fight against anti-Semitism, and we also work very closely on their implementation. Third, we promote the ARA definition diplomatically, politically at every occasion. Fourth, something that we have started very recently, at the Human Rights Council, there's the UPR process where the countries are examined for the human rights record. Well, now we have given the floor to Jewish community leaders to directly speak to their governments and ask what is to be done in a formal setting at the UN setting. We have done so far with 5 communities. We're continuing with more. And in all of these statements, of course, they also ask for the adoption and implementation of the ARA definition on the UN record. Fifth, we work with many UN mechanisms. Ahmed Shahid is one of them, to build further action on these topics. Six, online hate is a big importance for us. Recently, we organized a seminar between ODIHR and Jewish communities and social media companies to train the communities how to report anti-Semitic postings to the social media companies. And of course, we wish to expand them. Seventh, we daily monitor and report neo-Nazi activity, including groups, events, dangerous individuals, and we also inform the authorities and the communities. Eighth, we monitor and report posts on social media. Holocaust 9 books on online bookstores, so everything on the online space. 9, something that is hasn't been the focus, I think, of this conference and should be more strengthened within our lives, with our daily work, is to promote and safeguard Jewish heritage, is to create, to build resilience, to build local resilience so that the Jews can be accepted locally by creating local pride about the Jewish existence and contribution to the particular community, country, city, etc. We're working on some initiatives on that, and I think that should be something that we should be discussing more, how to do that. 10th, working a lot with UNESCO to develop educational resources, and not only educational resources and research, but also training of governments how to apply them on the local level. Very few seconds left about our youth programs. We have recently launched a program called Next Gen, which brings together young leaders through a fellowship program, campus activities and innovation in universities, an internship program, which also has a leadership component, strengthening both WUJES and UJES, the youth umbrella organizations, and not only youth, let's say university students, but we go all the way to young professionals through our Jewish diplomat program, the JDs, who are young individuals committed to Jewish life, who are active in diplomacy and advocacy. So these are some of the topics.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, for those of you who entered the room, I will just repeat the format. We are opening it for a short introduction from the speakers, and then we will open it for for Q&A and dialogue of all of us around the table, the virtual table. We have quite a few participants, and the physical one. So the next speaker is actually, I would say that we work as a state. You sit in a governmental office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we also need our counterpart, not only in organization, in communities, federation, etc., but also something that we can use the sovereign tools of a state in order to ask, to complain, to bring something up when any of those matters, and they come much often than we want, the challenges for Jewish life in Europe. So without further ado, Katerina, we would like to hear your perspective as the Commission coordinator on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life in Europe.
Thank you very much, Hamutal. It's a pleasure to be with you. I would much prefer to be in the room with you all. And I've seen several friends coming into the room and so on during the session. So it's great to to see you. I'll respond a bit to what has been said already, but also would like to take a bit broader view. I think when it comes to Jewish life, indeed, there are threats, but we also see a lot of positive developments. And I think it's important to not focus only on the negative. We have a tendency to do so because, you know, because this is the things that we need to solve. But I think it's also important, and this is because we are
Daniela, tu sais comment est-ce qu'on met Katharina en grand?
Pascal, on
t'attend. Oh, sorry.
Voilà. Okay.
Good.
We're good.
This was, I think, my colleague connecting.
Okay. Now she's muted.
No, but I think with regards to the narrative to the general public, I think it's really important to, as we do, highlight the challenges on the one side, but to not be put too much in a corner of, you know, everything is going bad either, because it's sometimes difficult to come out of this corner. So my intervention will focus on both issues. Maybe I should also, or I would like to say at the beginning really that it is a pleasure to work with the Israeli MFA, and has been through the past 5-6 years. And it's, for our understanding, essential to be on one note when it comes to addressing anti-Semitism in Europe with the Israeli administration, because it really also, I think, helps to create synergies and to avoid too many different narratives on this. So, first of all, the European Commission will this year adopt its first ever strategy on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life. And this is a very important addition. We really see that security is one aspect, and the addressing anti-Semitism and preventing anti-Semitism, but the positive aspects of supporting Jewish life in its diversity is the other side, and we really want to focus on this aspect. The challenges, some of them have been mentioned. I mean, with regards to Shrita and Brit Milah, we fully recognize them. In fact, already in our 2018 FRA survey that Leon mentioned, we asked a question, and the result was, and as most of you know, this was taken in 12 countries, around 60,300 Jews. Average respondents was that 82% see it as a problem if Brit Milah would be banned, and 69% see it as a problem for banning Shrita. So that, of course, it varies. For example, Italy is the highest when it comes to Brit Milah with 91%, followed by France and followed by Belgium. And when it comes to Shrita, it's also Italy with 79% and 76%, then followed by France. So this, it's important, I think, to recognize that we have some data on this already on European level. Then you know that there was a court ruling in December, which said that the European legislation gives a balance between freedom of religion on the one side and other values in a broad sense, including animal welfare. This can sound strange because it basically thereby also confirmed that if Belgium wants to go ahead and ban, they can do so. But what it really says is that the exemption that is built in the European legislation for member states to take their responsibility and make sure that their national legislation allows for these practices in the context of freedom of religion and belief, and with the knowledge that it's not just about having a religion, but being able to practice it as well, that this exemption is sufficient. And we know that this is true because there are countries where legislation based on this European legislation is actually sufficient and good with regards to allowing explicitly or giving the right explicitly to both Brit Milá and Shrita. So I think this is important to understand, because sometimes there is a confusion that, you know, we should just change legislation on European level and everything will be fixed. In fact, we are guided by the treaties, and we have a certain religious, competence according to the treaty. And so within that, the solution will be on national levels. This doesn't mean that we are pulling out with regards to our responsibility. I do think that the EU has a role to play in bringing countries together, in ensuring that countries talk to where it works already, talk to those where it doesn't work, that we talk with the communities concerned, and to try to support finding solutions there, aware that in the end national governments have to take action and legislation. So I think that's with regards to Brit Milá and Shrita is important to understand. I also would like to say that it's important, and that's why we have to be careful to be aware that the decisions as such often are not necessarily anti-Semitic. They can be, and Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt has mentioned that often it's guided to with regards to the Muslim community, and the Jews are collateral damage. But I think it's important also to understand that often it is also just simply lack of knowledge and lack of awareness, and so. Again, it's very difficult once people are labeled as anti-Semitic for doing this, then they will not come out of this corner. So, yeah, an important aspect. Then we have, I think, on the other side, so we have the area of security where we continue to put pressure as well on the member states, and this will also be an aspect of the strategy. Because we know that unfortunately at the moment security is needed as a prerequisite for Jewish life and for living a Jewish life also as a community. We have already started to support member states and also the communities with regards to ensuring that there is an exchange of best practices, including through a call last year, where out of 10 projects that were selected, 2 are actually led by Jewish organizations. And I think this is something that we will continue and strengthen in the strategy as well. But then we want to ensure also this aspect of how we can support Jewish life. And I think there are these 2 aspects. One is that Jewish life can be lived in its diversity, and that Jews can go about their lives free from security concerns, and that we work towards normalcy of Jewish life. That, for example, includes that, as was the case, as a reference to the Council 2018 declaration, that when there are integration measures that, for example, addressing anti-Semitic prejudices with newcomers to Europe is part of the curriculum that you know, and the discussions they have as part of their integration. So to ensure that these aspects that are already in the Council declaration are indeed implemented and supported by the European instruments that we have, like the Action Plan on Integration and Inclusion that was recently adopted at the end of 2020. So this aspect of being able to live life for the Jewish community is one. The other aspect is really to raise the awareness about Jewish life among the general public. And this is maybe the most challenging, because we know that from another survey that we did in 2019 among general public across the EU and all member states, that only 3% say that they have the feeling that they know enough about Jewish culture and Jewish practices. Given that the Jewish community has been in Europe for over 2,000 years, this is appalling. This is a real problem. So we will find channels and ways to reach the general public together with the Jewish communities, but also through, again, the channels that exist on European level, because this can be done through public awareness raising, but also through project funding. And we have, for the next period, and with relation also to this strategy, significantly more funds available to ensure that projects that support the Jewish community life and that support also intercultural, interreligious activities can be strengthened. And that we really look at this aspect in a very supportive way. So these two aspects, I think, go together. And then I would also like to strengthen that already. And this is not often, I think, known. We have a lot of funding that goes into also research. I mean, I discover new things every day almost. For example, that there is a project that we fund on Ladino proverbs in Yugoslav countries at the time, So it's really research projects that are very specific, but we don't see at the moment the outcome of it, or what does it mean for the heritage, as was rightly said also, of Jewish culture in a specific country. So we will have to make sure that these things are also brought to the general public, and we benefit from the millions of euro that are going already into research. And the same is true, for example, for the fencing of Jewish cemeteries in Eastern Europe, where we have had a project now for I think 5 years, if I know well, no, from 2018, and 3,000 cemeteries have already been fenced in 9 European countries. Now we will continue this with another 1.2 million, so then there is a project on the Schloss collection to make provenance research. So while we cannot look into restitution, we can support this with collecting data. So just to say, there is a lot already happening. To make a final point, I think, also with regards to activities from the states and certainly from the European Commission, a lot has been improved, including data recording, also with regards to the online sphere, but and the security aspects. But in my view, we need to do more, so it actually changes and improves the situation for the Jewish communities. So far, the results of this gradual change of using the existing structures and mainstreaming the fight against anti-Semitism through them has not yet sufficiently arrived at the Jewish communities. And this is the ultimate goal. In order to create a future for the Jews in Europe, we must make sure that this change actually reaches them and really improves their daily lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Katharina. From Brussels, we move to London. We move to Mr. Shimon Cohen. Katharina, you spoke about raising awareness. And as I mentioned, Shimon, when you were a little bit away from the new media, you established Shechita UK, so awareness for Jewish life is in the center of your work. So please. Oh, hold on a second, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Okay.
Forgive me, I had a sort of bit of a power blackout, but anyway, I'm back, and thank you so much indeed. May I first say thank you very much indeed for inviting me to participate today. May I secondly say that with huge respect to the Israeli Minister for Foreign Affairs, it is an incredible honor to speak on the same platform as two giants of this subject, Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt, President of the Conference of European Rabbis, who's a very lonely man in this world, and I'll explain why in a moment, standout character, and also somebody who I don't know if such a title, Rav Goldschmidt, exists, but a sort of righteous Gentile in our generation, in Katharina von Schnarbein, a truly remarkable friend of Jews and Jewish communities Europe-wide, and someone who I personally count as a friend as well. So a huge honor for me. However, I would say that one of the reasons I agreed to speak at this panel was because I thought it was going to be a welcome relief from discussions about anti-Semitism. And I have a serious reason for saying so as well, because I thought this was all about promoting Jewish life and living a Jewish life in Europe. And frankly speaking, anti-Semitism, I grew up with anti-Semitism. It never stopped us leading a very full, active, religious, observant Jewish life. My first example of anti-Semitism was when I must have been about 10 years old. I was literally waiting for my school bus. I came from a place where there were very few Jews, and only Orthodox Jews. I was waiting for the school bus, and I was suddenly attacked by a group of boys. I was pinned down, a number of boys on each limb, as a man, another schoolboy, took out a ruler and measured my nose. That was my first experience of anti-Semitism. My second real experience of anti-Semitism was walking to shul one Shabbos morning, not soon after that particular event of the nose measuring, with a cousin of mine called Elliot, when the same guy ran at us with a bread knife and stabbed Elliot in the head and killed him as we were walking to shul. Now, those are two shocking experiences that I had as a child of anti-Semitism. However, it never stopped us leading a full and active Jewish life. It was sort of something we had to contend with. I suppose as my great-grandparents had to contend with that type of anti-Semitism as they were growing up in parts of Ukraine and Russia and what have you. And therefore, sort of as minorities, we never really expected anything different. And I hankered as a child after a move to London, where we could live amongst Jews in a full, without having to contend with that stuff, but we had to contend with that. So I do tend to separate the two, anti-Semitism and protecting Jewish life, and that's that particular point. Now, my second point is, how have we got ourselves into this position? Really, those of us who are Orthodox Jews have to take a really big share of responsibility for this, because after the Second World War, Orthodox Jews, observant Jews, did not play a full part in either European life, the life of their countries, or actually in Jewish community life. And secular Jewish organizations took control of what they thought was Jewish life. And I don't say this with any criticism, please, of any of the secular organizations at all. I just believe it to be a fact. And therefore, there was no real concept of when the legislation was developed about protecting Jews, and Jews should be allowed to live in freedom of religion and all of this stuff. The religious communities, the Orthodox communities, the Frum communities had no input in that. Our fault. Nobody else's fault. I'm not blaming anybody else. I'm blaming us. And so the development of freedom of religion was allowed, and everyone thought, oh, that's marvelous. Jews can now live nicely, and that's all very nice, and they don't have to go to court on a holiday and what have you. It didn't mean different practices. It meant that just like the Catholics were allowed to have their freedom of belief, and the Protestants were allowed to have their different freedom of belief, it meant the Jews could as well, and that's absolutely fine. What happened subsequently, though, was that Jewish law relating to Shechita and Mila and other things that Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt spoke about suddenly came into conflict, but actually they didn't come into conflict. The reason they didn't come into conflict is because it didn't matter. In the United Kingdom, legislation on Schlitter was brought forward in the 1930s, and it said all animals must be stunned before slaughter, except for Jews and Muslims. Now, if anybody were to think that there were brilliant lobbyists and very forthright speakers in the 1930s saying that, oh, we've got to separate ourselves from, we can't allow our animals to be stunned, it's absolute nonsense. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. The reason we were given that exemption is because we didn't count. There were hardly any of us. It didn't matter. The number of animals were tiny, and the legislation was created to cover factory farming, factory production. We didn't count. We were irrelevant. And for many, many, many years, we remained irrelevant until things changed in Europe. And when it changed in Europe, it's very recent, the change in Europe. After all, Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt knows that the Conference of European Rabbis has been at the forefront of this, but frankly, the poor stepchild of European Jewish community life, EJC, WJC, all of these organizations, they're the real ones. And the Conference of European Rabbis is seen by Jews as a bunch of frummers who really sort of, a bit embarrassing, but we'll tolerate them from time to time. And the frummers get in our way. They get in our way. We want to be good Europeans, and the frummers get in the way. Now it's all about us. Why? Because a group of people, another group of immigrants, come in and have shown that actually it matters, the number of animals killed, the number of children being killed, all of these things matter and to us. And now we are the religious Jews are at the forefront of all of this, because actually it's only observance that matters. We can integrate perfectly. There's nothing to stop Jews becoming prime ministers of countries, nothing to stop Jews living as Jews, but not as from Jews. It's observance that matters now. And therefore, I'm sorry, the legislation that currently exists does not protect us. We think it does, it doesn't. The protection of religious belief, protection of free to practice religion, it didn't mean us killing animals in a different way, circumcising our boys. It actually meant whether you were allowed to have mass or not allowed to have mass. It was all about belief. The legislation isn't enough. That's the first thing. So if we want to have protecting Jewish life, vibrant Jewish life, we have to, as lobbyists, legislate. We have to work on legislation that does protect us. The existing legislation doesn't protect us. Enough. Now, one more point I would like to make is that, and I've said what I said about Katerina. We couldn't be here without you, Katerina. However, and this is not your issue, not your issue. However, it's very nice that at a meeting with President of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, when I made this point about we need protection under the law, he hugged me and he said, you've got the protection. It's very nice. Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt hosts European leaders at all times at our conferences, and at each time they tell us that Europe wouldn't be Europe without the Jews, and it's lovely to hear it and we love it. But when Belgium did what Belgium did, and when the European Court of Justice did what the European Court of Justice did, no one, not Timmermans, not Sassoli, no one stood publicly, loudly on a platform and said, this affects the way in which religious people can live in Europe. This is wrong. They told us quietly. They wrote us letters. They told us at little meetings of the Conference of European Rabbis, but not one European political leader stood up and said, this is wrong. And that, to me, is to the great shame of our elected leaders at the European Parliament and the appointed leaders at the European Commission. And until such time as the nice things that European leaders say about the Jewish community in private are said publicly, we will be facing a truly uphill battle. And therefore, I would call for a shift in focus, a shift in attention from the Jewish community groups, because we have to come together here. Shift away from, please, memorials and remembrance and cemeteries, important though it is. But if there is to be active Jewish life in Europe, religious Jewish life for all Jews, from Jews as well as not from Jews, there has to be a focus of our attention on what makes things right. We have so much good in Europe. Let's not forget. In Great Britain, we're still part of a continent of Europe, by the way, but in Great Britain, the government pays for our schools, the government pays for security because we need security, the government pays for our healthcare, the government pays for all of these things. It's awesome. In Russia, which is also part of the European continent, the government pays for schools, etc. In many countries, we have the most wonderful, vibrant, active Jewish life. Anti-Semitism is irritating and a bit of a blip and something we have to live with, I believe. But the good heavily outweighs the bad in what I believe in Jewish life in Europe, and let nobody misunderstand that. But if we are to protect ourselves, we have to do it through legislation, and there's going to have to be a shift in focus. And so overall, that's what I wanted to say. Our work at Shechita UK is about awareness. Rabbi Goldschmidt is absolutely right. People don't know. It's a shock to the system when they don't know. I once had a conversation with Geert Wilders when he tried to ban Shechita. I heard through somebody that he was very pro-Jewish apparently, and apparently loves Israel and was buddy-buddy with one of the Israeli foreign ministers in the past. And I went to see him. I said, I actually went to see him in a meeting in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Do you not understand? This is a guy who's been banned from entering in the UK, by the way, for his views. But I said, do you not understand that what you're trying to do not only affects Muslims, it affects the Jews as well? And he said, oh, yes, indeed. But I hate the Jews just that little bit less than I hate Muslims. So overall, awareness, pride, legislative that we have to achieve. Pay tribute, please, to our friends, Katerina particularly. Pay tribute to true Jewish leaders like Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt, who doesn't want to be just like another European, who doesn't want to be accepted and invited to the boards of companies in Europe just to be a bit Jewish. Someone like Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt, who stands up right across Europe, east to west, for active Jewish practice, for our difference, for our kadosh, for our separation from others, and takes enormous pride in championing these things. And we need more and more and more support. Thank you indeed for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen. We will be opening the round table for a discussion. We also have 18 participants on the Zoom. I'm taking myself the possibility to be the first one and going back to Rabbi Goldschmidt. And you were all speaking about the awareness and about the ignorance of the environment. Where do we start? Where do you start? Where do you start, Katerina, in order to educate people a little bit more? What does it mean, a Jewish life, and not only live Jews?
I think that what we have to do is basically talk to all the leading politicians in Europe and make them aware of the ramifications of such laws restricting Jewish ritual. I can speak for myself. I just came back a week ago from a round of a tour of talking to European leaders on this subject. We met with the head of the CDU in Germany, most probably the future Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Armin Laschet. We met with him in Düsseldorf. And when we raised, among the issues was not only issue, when we raised this issue, he first of all did not know about this issue. Number two, he understood when we explained to him that this is mostly one of the greatest challenges to a Jewish future in Europe. He understood, and we told him we don't need him on a German level as much as we need him on the European level. And so also when we met in Paris with leaders of the Jewish community, with Francis Khalifa, the head of the CRIF, and also with the chief rabbi of France, and also with French politicians, and we are preparing ourselves for the upcoming French presidency of the European Union, which will be beginning of 2022. I think if we have France and Germany working together, and here I would like to walk backwards a little bit. Germany pushed in a declaration against anti-Semitism for a Jewish future in the end of 2020. And we approached Felix Klein, the Commissioner against Anti-Semitism for a Jewish Future in Germany, to include specific language on religious freedom and Jewish practice. The language was put in, It was taken out when it reached the European level, and when it was passed in December, it was without this language. And when we met with EU Commission Vice President Margarita Schinas last Wednesday morning, and in Brussels, in Strasbourg, we said we're going to have to work together with France and with Germany to get this message across all of Europe. I would also like to add that we have also another ally in this battle. It is the Biden administration in the United States. And in general, I would say, and quoting Margarita Schinas, the relationship between the United States and the European Union is back on track under the Biden administration. And part of this reset, we would like to, and the Biden administration, the State Department's envoy to the OSCE, Mrs. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Karen McKennedy, officially said that it is part of the Biden administration's policy to work and to ensure freedom of religion for the Jewish community in Europe. So we have allies. We have now, and my belief is that as we speak to European leaders in different countries, we are being listened to, we're being understood, and we have to work together. We would very much appreciate it and like to see also the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs joining us in this challenge and battle, and to work with European institutions and work with, and if we can have a change on the European level, as Shimon said, this would be wonderful. And I know legally it is a challenge, but this aspect that we're talking about Jewish practice, not only about freedom of faith, is an issue which has to be brought. And I believe that also Margarita Schinas is our ally in this battle. And I believe by joining, all of us joining together, we'll be able to bring a change and to ensure a Jewish future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldschmidt. Just before we open it inside the room, we already have a few people who wrote us in the chat. So Judith Weissman, you wrote to everyone, but not everyone can see what you're writing in the chat. Would you like to speak? You're going to need to open your camera and your microphone, because I cannot do it for you. Judith Weissman.
Yes, thank you so much. I was not ready to speak. I thought you are only write. We can only write the questions. Okay, so I probably could be prepared more with my microphone. But do you hear me well in such a way?
We hear you. We hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a really great meeting, and actually, my reference and what I wrote, it was. Mostly for after the speech of Katarina, I appreciate very much all the efforts what she is doing, and not only she, but like all European Commission. But she said that we should educate, and she point our attention that only 3% of Europeans know about the Jewish life, and I think that we should start from the head. Yes, you know that. The fish stinks from the head. So we should educate, first of all, the European Commission. What does it mean, the Jewish tradition? And what does it mean, the kosher shchita? And what does it mean, all these things that are essential and so important foundations of the Jewish traditions and life in general, such as an observance of the laws of Torah, namely observance of kashrut and brit milah and others, of course, Shabbat, and so on. It's completely wrong if every country in Europe will decide for their citizens whether they can have shchita or brit milah or other things they interfere in the Jewish life, what they understand in Jewish life, what they understand in this essential tradition and the inner sense of these things. It's a peaceful traditions. We are not establishing the radical Islam or like it's someone takes it personally. I don't know if like Muslim friends are there, but and listening to us, I'm not saying that all the Muslims are radical, but we know that what's going on now in Europe. I'm talking from France. Okay, I'm living in France. So and this radical Islam doesn't care to anything that you are like, European Commission is doing. They go and continue with their halal. Halal is everywhere in the shops, okay? And why not kosher? Whereas already, like, we don't have any shops anymore, like these shelves in the shops disappearing. We don't have these kosher shops anymore. Less and less. Maybe like if you want to have your kosher Passover, you should go 200 kilometers to have some shop in Paris. Okay, so and it's everywhere. And it's so essential, peaceful tradition that actually based on the very, very deep inner understandings of the life, of the essential fundamentals of the life, of the sense of life. And that's what I'm saying, that actually the European member, the European Commission member, they should educate themselves, first of all, what is Judaism in general and what is Jewish life in Europe and in every country. Okay, that's what I wrote in chat, that we see that radical Islam is occupying the Europe from inside and establishing their Sharia zones. And we are just disappearing the Jewish community here. So what the European Union is doing today for the Jewish communities in Europe is exactly what Antiochus IV Epiphanes did for the Jews in Judea 200 years before.
Judith, thank you very much for your comment. It just shifts us to themes that we might like to address in some other panels. Let's keep ourselves on ensuring Jewish life in Europe. But thank you for the comment about education and so on and so on. And I would like to open the floor for comments from people who are in the room. And please.
Hi, I'm Susanna Cohen-Weiss. I'm working for the Diaspora Ministry. I just wanted to say one small point when we spoke about legislation in the different countries. I think we can take Austria as an example. The Israelitengesetz that was enacted in the beginning of the 21st century, 2006 or 8, I think. It makes really clear that the Jewish community decides about everything that has to do with the Jewish life. So you can't forbid shchita, you can't forbid brit milah, nothing. It's like there is a law that really makes sure that Jewish life will go on in Austria the way the Jewish community sees that's the right way to do it. I think Austria in this case can be taken as a very good example.
Please. Also, the speakers are allowed to answer, to comment, to everything. Yes, go ahead.
If there's no one, maybe I can just step into the discussion of Rabbi Goldschmidt about education. We started a program where we try to educate diplomats who work with the United Nations and UNESCO. And of course, I understand it's not just anti-Semitism and Holocaust. Of course, there's more to Jewish life, but we thought it was important things to teach. But what we were stricken by is that they don't know what the Jew is. So you start by speaking about anti-Semitism and Holocaust, but you don't know the fundamentals. They don't know anything about the Bible. They don't know anything about Jewish customs. They don't know anything where the Jews came from. They don't know anything about Jewish history. And you cannot speak about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust if you don't go back. And Rabbi Dayan, a good friend of Rabbi Goldschmidt, the chief rabbi of Geneva, had organized a session with him for Christian theologians at the World Council of Churches. There was like a room of 100 students of Christian theology. They've never met a rabbi before. They've never discussed Judaism. And when he gave the presentation, you could see how they were impacted. So I think it's important, Rabbi Goldschmidt and maybe Katarina Borschnurbein, to create spaces for conversation. People, before fighting anti-Semitism, and they need to know who is a Jew, what we do, where we come from. And then you can speak everything else. And I think that's an important thing to mention.
Thank you very much, Katarina. I see you raised your hand. Please.
Yes, so on this last aspect, I think you're absolutely right. To create spaces is very important. That's why I mentioned also the possibility for intercultural, interreligious dialogue as part, let's say, also of projects. So longer term interaction and not just sporadic. On the other hand, I think we also have to be mindful that the burden cannot be only on the Jewish community because also of the size and so on. So we don't want to overburden either. We do think that there is a role also for the institutions and for the national administrations to be played here. With regards to Brit Mila and Srita, so I think I need to be maybe a bit clearer also with regards to the audience. The EU has no competence with regards to circumcision. No, we cannot intervene, we cannot regulate, we cannot pass laws. It's according to the treaty. With regards to ritual slaughter or to slaughter in general, there is a certain competence. So there is animal welfare legislation which allows for an exemption with regards to religious practices. And then it is for the member states to decide whether they take this exemption and legislate in favor of ensuring that this religious practice is possible. It's very important to understand because we cannot go outside the treaty to respond to this need. I fully appreciate the challenge that we are facing, but it's important to see where in Realpolitik we can find a solution. And there I really appreciate the comment from the colleague from the Diaspora Ministry with regards to the Austrian law. I think this is exactly what needs to happen, that there is an exchange of between countries where it works and where there is a solution, and those countries where there is no solution yet or where there are difficulties. And this, I believe, is something that we should facilitate together with the communities to make sure that this kind of exchange takes place, and then member states act accordingly. And I think we also have to take another aspect into account that was to some extent raised by the court as well. This debate is not taking place in a vacuum. We have a very active animal welfare community. We have rights of the child communities, and they are valid actors in the public sphere. So, you know, we need to make sure that we build bridges and that we find some sort of solution that is viable. And so. Yeah, let's really look at the facts in order to find solutions and also to see what the individual actors and what their responsibility is with regards to bringing about a solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Shimon, please, can you unmute yourself?
I think I am unmuted. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am unmuted. So thank you again. I mean, I wanted to just to pick up on this issue of education. It is absolutely right. But you see, once again, Katerina has stepped into the breach here because you always will. It's our responsibility, not Katerina's, to educate the European Commission, the European communities, the European people, the European politicians. And we're playing catch up. We haven't done it properly because, as I mentioned before, after the Second World War, it wasn't the religious communities that exerted themselves, it was the secular communities. And so we are playing a little bit of catch up. You know, we never went out and talked to people about Shrita because it didn't, as I mentioned before, it didn't matter. We didn't do these things. And I think we do have to create our own spaces and invite people in. It isn't about asking Katerina to create those spaces. We have to do it. Chief Rabbi Goldschmidt's entire mission in life is to do that. And when he does it, it works. And the influence that he's had in so many areas is absolutely immense and needs to be recognized and built upon. But it's two sides of it. I've always been very taken by policy in the government of Israel, where leaders, elected leaders in Israel, whether or not they have an interest in religious matters. The Prime Minister of Israel is simply not allowed to travel anywhere on Shabbat. The Prime Minister of Israel is simply not allowed to eat anything other than kosher food when he's representing the state of Israel. But you know, this should be absolute policy from all the communal organizations right across Europe and the world, in fact, that if you're representing Jews, you have to represent Judaism. And you have to make a stand, because, all too often, Rabbi Goldschmidt has to go along to a sort of an event at the European Parliament with lots and lots of other Jews, and he's the only one where kosher food is brought in for him. It sort of changes the outlook. So we have to be proud of our Jewish traditions, our Jewish culture, and our Jewish practice as Jews. Whether or not we all want to keep it is our own personal business. When we are on the stage as Jews, we have to be Jewish, and that will help educate and bring people more and more respect for our faith and our tradition. It will help us in terms of the legislative process that we now will have to go through.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Andrew?
Thank you. I'm Andrew Cyrilovich. I'm the Director of European Affairs for ADL here in Europe, in Switzerland. And the point I wanted to add is, when we talk about religious freedom and educating people, I think we need to make sure to explain really what we're talking about with religious freedom by making the sort of parallel with freedom of speech. When we defend freedom of speech, we're saying that there are things that we don't like that people can say. That we can vehemently disagree with, even hateful things, but we defend their right to say them. All we're asking for, we're not asking people to like Brit Milah. We're not asking people to like Shechita. We're saying the material difference between, in terms of animal suffering, between Shechita, which we believe is the most humane way, and stunning, it's not material enough for you. You may dislike it, but it's within the realm of the acceptable. Same thing with Brit Milah. Very different, for example, from female genital mutilation, which we can all agree is outside the bounds. This is enough inside the bounds, even if they don't like it. We don't need to argue that it's better medically, that, and all the other arguments to say it's better. We can just say, this is enough that you need to allow us, in the same way that you allow speech that you dislike, allow religious practice that you may dislike, because it's a lot lower bar to convince them to accept us, especially in the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Please.
Patrick, I would like to ask, to Robert Goldschmidt, who in Europe is fighting so much that we stop the slaughter of animals, because it doesn't pop from nowhere. And I know from the church we don't care about that. You can speak to a cardinal, he will tell you do what you want with the animals. But who is pushing so? Because I think if it's moving in a bad way in Europe, people are pushing that. And
okay, the anti-Shechita push has much more to do with two-legged animals than four-legged animals. Meaning, the law was passed in 1895 in Switzerland to stop Russian Jews who were religious to emigrate to Switzerland. This was the first anti-Shechita law only against animals, not against chickens. Then in the 1930s, as anti-Semitism rose in Poland and other places, the fourth law passed by Nazi Germany against Jews was an anti-Shechita law. It was not anti-immigration, it was pro-emigration. They tried to get the Jews, there were 500,000 Jews in Germany at that time, around 40% kept kosher, at least at home. They wanted to get rid of the Jews before they thought of the final solution. And the anti-Shechita law was passed. And actually, a large segment of German Jews left Germany. Part of them came here to Palestine, which became Israel. Now, the new wave has been, as I said, initiated of the response of old Europe against the Muslim immigration to Europe, 40 million Muslims today within the EU. And we, the Jews, are the collateral damage. And this push, for example, we have citizens' initiatives against circumcisions in Finland, in Denmark, we had it in Iceland. We have even push against, in Switzerland, where there's a special law allowing the community to import kosher meat. There is an initiative to disallow
the import of kosher meat to Switzerland. Now, and there are always initiatives in Poland against kosher and halal. So we have Scandinavia, we have now Belgium, but all over Europe there is movement. Now, who is behind it? It's originally, so we had the two extremes. In part, we had with FETA, with the animal rights, we used to bomb and firebomb events, and Brigitte Bardot, etc. And we had the far-right parties, part of the anti-Muslim platform. And as the far-right has gained momentum in Europe, the central-right parties took over this platform. And for example, just the CDU in East Germany, in one of the land, I don't remember which, I think Sachsen-Anhalt or in another land in Germany, wanted to include in its platform an anti-Shahita bill. So there is this tension and this movement, and the problem is we don't hear enough, as Shimon said, we don't hear enough European leaders say, stop, if you want a Jewish future in Europe, if you want Jews to stay in Europe, we cannot do this. And I would like to thank the Vatican and the Catholic Church, who has been with us, and every time we ask the Catholic Church for help, whether it was for Brit Milah in Iceland, or and we have received support from the Catholic communities on the religious freedom issues.
Thank you. Yes, Lonnie.
Yes, I'm Ronnie Naftalia from the Netherlands. I understand that there are debates on the stunning issue. So I understand that stunning for the slaughtering itself is impossible because the animal has to be healthy and so on. But the post-stunning issue is something which is hardly debated among the European rabbis. So what is the situation on that? Because in the US, I understand that some of the rabbis accept post-stunning. So after the cut, that the animal gets stunned. And how is the position of the European rabbis about it?
I think Shimon exactly. Shimon would like to answer you.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
please, Shimon.
I mean, I put my hand up earlier because I wanted to pick on something else, but I want to address that particular thing. With all due respect, sir, please understand that the first ban on Shechita, as Rabbi Goldsmith just pointed out, was in Switzerland in 1895. It came 25 years before any codified animal welfare legislation anywhere in Europe. So it's got nothing to do with animal welfare. Stunning is not an animal welfare process at all, never was. It's a factory process designed to move things along. It has nothing whatsoever to do with animal welfare whatsoever. And anybody who understands anything at all about food production knows that. Now, if you really think that if the rabbis suddenly decided let's electrocute all our animals before Shechita, then everyone will love the Jews, frankly, it's a pipe dream. They'll find something else. It's got nothing to do with animal welfare. So that particular point about it doesn't matter, because it's not, the anti-Shechita lobby is not about animal welfare. It was not about animal welfare in Switzerland in the 19th century. It was not about animal welfare in Germany in the 20th century. It was not about animal welfare in the Netherlands in the 21st century. And it is not about animal welfare today. It's only to do with curtailing Muslims. The idea was let the Swiss one, so Jews wouldn't come. The Germans, as Rabbi Goldsmith pointed out, so the Jews would leave. The Netherlands' attempt was so that the Muslims would leave. That's what Geert Wilders told me. And that's what it's about. So it's got nothing to do with animal welfare in that respect. The other point that I wanted to make, and I don't, forgive me, I'm a bit, I am what I am. You can see that, and I say it as I think. But the question was asked right at the very beginning by a gentleman, I don't know who the gentleman is, I'm so sorry, who said, who is opposed to the way which we slaughter animals, because we at the church don't care. That's nice that you don't care, but where are you in support? I don't hear the churches in Belgium standing up for our rights to slaughter animals, to live a full Jewish life, or indeed for Muslims to live a full Muslim life. I haven't seen a church statement which says that this Belgian law is wrong, and I haven't seen a church statement taking issue with the European Commission, Court of Justice. And once again, Rabbi Goldschmidt, I love you, and as you know, and I know the Catholic Church have given you those assurances, but I haven't seen them in public anywhere, and that sort of irritates me enormously. The other point, last point I wanted to make, if I may, Judith Wiseman made an extremely good point. We had a situation here in the United Kingdom where a Muslim gentleman was elected mayor of some city, which was great, absolutely amazing, because the Jews have been elected mayors of cities before, and this was the first time a Muslim had been elected mayor of a city, and it was fantastic. It was real integration until it came to Christmas, and he, as the mayor of the town, forbade a Christmas tree to be put up in the center of the town because he's a Muslim. Now, no Jewish mayor of a town in the UK would ever suggest there should be no Christmas tree. The point is, we don't want anybody to eat kosher meat except Jews, and we certainly don't want to circumcise anybody else's babies. And therefore, Andrew Shulovich's point is right. Leave us alone. We don't cause you any harm. And that's why, all being well, very nice to cooperate with Muslims and Muslim communities. And I'm at the forefront of it. And frankly, I'm cooperating with some Muslim communities that some of the Jewish organizations wish I wouldn't cooperate with. The from the Muslims, the more I have in common with them about religious observance. But frankly speaking, we are not asking anyone to eat kosher meat or circumcise anybody's children. Leave us alone to carry on doing what we do. We don't get in anybody's way. It doesn't matter to anybody. The laws should be better. We don't need new laws. The laws should be better policed. Slaughter of animals for your own food use. Jews only slaughter for their own food use. Stop the overslaughter in the halal industry. There is no shechita industry. Shechita is a community service. There is a halal industry that sells as much as they could possibly kill to whoever wants to buy it. That is not in accordance with the law. Often, when the law is not adhered to, liberties get removed. That is what's happening here. Use the law, control the amount of slaughter. You only need the amount of halal slaughter for the people who want to eat halal meat. Control that. There will be less seepage into the general market. There will be less attention drawn to it. So overall, I wanted to make those various points because I think they're important to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Shimon. If anyone,
Yeah, sorry, I don't think that I got an answer. I said that in the US, rabbis practice post-stunning.
Yeah,
and
there's still a massive anti-Shechita lobby in the US.
Yeah, but so why it's not happening? Why is there no debate on that in Europe?
Because it's not
because you said it doesn't make a difference, but if it doesn't make a difference, why are there colleagues, Orthodox colleagues, who do post-stunning?
It's not.
So I wonder.
The answer.
I wonder why.
The answer is very straightforward. It's not relevant with regard to shechita. We don't need the stunning because we don't slaughter enough to need. It's not a business, it's a community service. So our shoftim are paid a salary, not like other abattoir workers who are paid per animal. We only slaughter what we need. We don't need to make the processes move faster and faster and faster. I appreciate in the United States where it's in enormous quantities are slaughtered every day. The kosher abattoirs are very similar to non-kosher abattoirs because of the volumes. Here in this country, we don't need mechanical interventions. We don't need factory processes because we don't slaughter enough. It's just a very methodical process. We just get through it. So it's not a relevant consideration here in Europe. It is relevant in Israel because of the quantities. It is relevant in the United States because of the quantities. But in Europe, it's not a relevant consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Shimon. Maybe one last comment because we need in 3 minutes, we need to wrap it up and it's already way past lunch for some of our colleagues, at least from the Netherlands. No, so please.
So I would like to say that the situation is not the same everywhere. In France, the groups who are pro-animals and anti-slaughter are very secular. And there are also, by example, the mayor of Bordeaux and the mayor of, they're also forbidden to make a Christmas tree. and they are not Muslim at all. They are completely secular. So I say that because to have an idea that a religion can have a weight on chicken, for them it's impossible to understand, even to cut a tree. So I say that because we are confronted also at a huge secularization in Europe. And the groups who are acting are not necessarily they are anti-religion globally.
Mm-hmm.
And will not be influenced by the point of view of the Vatican or of any other religious organization.
Yeah.
To the contrary.
And so to explain to these people what is Judaism, I would say they don't care because it's a religion.
Because
So,
it's irrelevant to
so
them what
it's
is
a strong
Judaism, yeah.
confrontation that we have. I don't know until where it will go, but the secularization is growing and growing and growing.
Thank you very much, everybody. We just opened the discussion. It will go on. We will bring some conclusion with some action item. If I may, as the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in this room, I would just like to add one comment to all of you who are so committed for ensuring Jewish life in Europe. You have us as a partner. You have the government of Israel as a partner, but we will never take the responsibility of the government where Jews are citizens. We will never be able to take the responsibility, neither for ensuring Jewish life nor for combating anti-Semitism. It will have to be a partnership. We will have to work together with the government because Israel will never be able to ensure Jewish life in other states. So thank you very much, and hope to see you all in person very, very soon.